life is a mess and you're totally stressed out, just call Trent. Just call Trent. When your wife is cold as ice and you need some advice, just call Trent. Just call Trent. He'll shoot it straight and he won't say no. He'll just give you that advice and say, well, there you go.
Yeah, I just moved out here about 3 weeks ago. I was on the Upper West Side for the first year I was here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love the Upper West Side.
Me too. I would love to stay, but they raised the rent $2,000. So
Jeez,
yeah,
that's such bullshit.
I know.
That is just the worst.
Yeah, it was crazy. But I like Sunnyside a lot so far.
Yeah. Well, Queens is kind of happening now.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. But originally I'm from Indiana.
Wow.
Yeah. So so you weren't like a big comedy kid when you were growing up. You didn't really have any desires to do comedy or write comedy, right?
I really had no desire to be in comedy as a kid. I mean, not that I didn't want to. It just never dawned on me. I mean, it's funny. I was on this panel a few years ago at the Austin Film Festival, and it was like with other comedy writers, and they were asking like, who are your biggest influences? And they're all talking about Abbott and Costello and this and that and Mel Brooks, and I'm like, Woodward and Bernstein.
Yeah.
I was really more interested in journalism than anything.
Right. And then
I like writing full sentences, as opposed to scripts.
Yeah, exactly. So then you went to college. Where'd you go to college?
University of Maryland.
For journalism, right?
Yeah, I mean, I the journalism department, which is fantastic now, was awful then. So like I took about 3 classes and then I like looked on the schedule of classes and thought, there's nothing else I really want to take.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a hit major. I was good at BSing essays.
Yeah. So then you after you graduate, you get a job at the Washington Post.
Yeah, I kind of, scammed my way in.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard from somebody who went to Maryland a couple of years before me and who wrote for the newspaper at school that they really weren't hiring white males at the time. Which was kind of understandable, just because certainly then Washington D.C. was like 80% Black.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually wrote a job letter as a woman. I used my friend's name, Faith Cates, and like I wrote this letter, and they wrote me back and offered me this job with like really bad hours, but it was like a foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh God, they're expecting a woman. What am I going to do? So I wrote another letter explaining why I wrote the first letter. And then like then they had to meet me, and I got to meet like every editor, short of Ben Bradley, and it was really great. And, I kind of got my foot in the door, and I was a copy aide, and I was the most incompetent copy aide of all time. So they just started letting me write.
And then what kind of articles were you writing?
I was mostly in sports.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I got in, but I was always trying to get into other sections, like I'd travel just to basically so I could write something for the travel section. I was writing, TV reviews and things like that, just, trying to, get in there as much as I can. But, I look at these journalists from the Washington Post who are on, like TV now, and they're so hardcore, and they dig so hard. And I kind of realized in retrospect that wasn't really me,
Yeah.
you know.
So what made you? Did you leave to do Seinfeld, or did you leave before that?
Oh no, I left way before that. I left in and I moved to New York, and you know, it took me a long time, but I got a job at ABC Sports working for a guy named, I don't know if you'd ever heard of him, but I was working for a guy named Howard Cosell.
Oh yeah, I know Howard Cosell. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like he was the most famous person in America back then. You
Mm-hmm.
know, every year he would be on the lists of the top 10 most admired and most hated people in America
Yeah.
simultaneously. And you know, it was like living in the epicenter of the sports world. And so we did a sports journalism program that's kind of like the precursor to the show that Brian Gumbel does now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it was, and without that kind of budget. But you know, that was really amazing, and you know, I got to go to the '84 Olympics in LA, and you know, I was in the first and only time I ever worked the live event, you know, and I was in charge of like nailing down what should be on the instant replays.
Oh really?
Yeah, which was pretty hairy. Um, but you know, like after the Olympics, about 4 months later, it just worked out that ABC Sports had given in to such incredible corporate waste at the Olympics that they did massive cutbacks. And you know, working for Howard Cosell was the kind of job where, like, after I was hired, there were maybe two other people hired, you know, in the 2.5 years that I was there. So I was at the end of the list. So I
Mm-hmm.
got laid off, which was the best thing in a way, because you know, it was a great experience, but you know, it's not really writing.
Right.
So you know, I was done with that. And you know, then I just kind of, I was looking around trying to figure out what to do next, and one day I just wrote this article called the "We Just Broke Up Last Night" diet.
Mm-hmm.
It was about like what you eat, what a guy eats for the next 5 days after he's been dumped. And I sold it to Mademoiselle magazine, which was a great magazine, but no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is so great. And they loved it. And I got to like meet with all these editors. And then I got to go into other magazines, and I was writing for GQ and all these women's magazines. And then I started, you know, writing some stuff for the New York Times. So that was really, 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 really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1989, I just kind of needed a break, you know. I needed like a little bit of a life change. And so I always liked LA from the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved to LA, and, you know, I kept writing freelance. And then, you know, I bumped into Larry David one day,
Yeah.
who I had met in New York literally twice. I met
How'd
him
you how'd you meet him? Were you like bouncing around?
in
Like
New
did
York.
Mhm.
In New York, I met him because I had like a half share in a summer house in the Hamptons,
Mhm.
you know, with a whole bunch of people. And one of the people in the house brought Larry out as a guest. So I basically spent one day with him. And,
Mhm.
you know, he was kind of fun, you know, and I'd heard of him. And he, you know, we kind of got along well and everything. And then I saw him one other time. And then I moved out here, and I bump into Larry on the street, which is really the most important part of the entire story, because I should stress that everything is luck.
Right.
You know, you know, getting yourself ready to be lucky is everything. So I
Mhm.
bump into Larry, and you know, he knows I'm a writer. He didn't know that I never wrote a script before. And you know, he says, I'm doing this little TV show with Jerry Seinfeld. Maybe you could write a script for us. Give me a writing sample, and I'll pass it on to Jerry. So I didn't have a script, but I wrote this article, kind of a semi bittersweet humor piece in the New York Times Magazine that had gotten a lot of attention.
Mhm.
And And Jerry just took a shine to it. So I got a chance to write a script. And, you know, not too long after, I was like loaded.
So what I was gonna ask, what were your first impressions of Larry when you met him at the summer house?
Trying to remember. I remember, I got to say, my first real memory of him is that he was a really good laugher.
Mm-hmm.
If you said something that he found funny, he didn't just say, "Oh, that's funny." He really laughed.
Yeah.
You know? I remember I was on, like, we were just hanging out at the pool or something like that, and something came up, and I just said, "Yeah, I'm a man of the '80s," and then I said, "I can't wait for him to end." And I remember like Larry busting out laughing and thinking, "Wow, that's for like a comedian to laugh at
Right.
somebody else." Like that was like, I thought that was really generous.
Yeah.
As it turned out, Jerry was like that too. But like a lot of comedians are not
Mm-hmm.
generous with their laughs. So I would say that's the first thing I remember about him.
That's interesting because I've talked to some guys who knew him as a stand-up. They did stand-up with him, and you hear all these stories of his stand-up where if the audience wasn't on board immediately, he would just get angry and
Yeah,
walk off stage. And
and storm off. Yeah.
yeah.
And then one time, he was famous for storming off the stage and then coming back to point out one person in the audience and said, "Yeah, you could have talked during my set a little bit more, you retard fuck." And then he stormed off again. Like he had it in his mind that this one guy didn't get it. He didn't stick it to this one guy. You gotta love Larry.
Oh yeah. So you send in the essay, and then they bring you in, and are you like pitching ideas for?
Exactly. The thing was, they had done, I think at that time they had produced only 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave me VHSs at the time of the 3 episodes, and I watched them, and I actually got nervous
Uh-huh.
because I was like, "Oh my God, this is really good." I mean, like, this is something I think I would like to be part of. I mean,
Right.
and I didn't know what I was doing. But, I went in and remember going into that office, and Jerry was like lying down on the couch. And like the first thing he said was, "God, it's like 3 o'clock. I haven't done anything all day and I'm exhausted. What is going on here?" You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually a little nervous, but I was pitching ideas. And Larry Charles, who was another great writer,
Mm-hmm.
um, he was in the room. And one of the ideas I pitched was, that Jerry kind of absentmindedly tells Elaine that apartment opened up in his building, like an old woman died.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden he like, she wants the apartment, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh my God, what did I do? I'm gonna have my ex-girlfriend, in the building. I'm gonna have to
Right.
sneak, he goes, I'm gonna have to sneak in like a." And that was the entire pitch. Like there was nothing else. Like that was the idea. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
good. Go ahead and write it. And no other show would just send you off, but they didn't really know what they were doing because they weren't sitcom people.
Right.
So I don't know if you remember that episode, but there's another storyline in there where George goes to a party for the New York Marathon with Jerry, and he wears a wedding ring just to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
like, women would really hit on him. And I wrote that story into the script,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, and they didn't even know that that was the story. That was not a story I talked to them about. I just
Uh-huh.
thought, "No, this is good." I could, like I could get them in a situation where they're both arguing about who's the bigger idiot and arguing for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, "No, you have not, I'm the biggest idiot." No, and it just worked out. I dropped off the script, and I drove home, I was living in Venice then, and the show, was in Studio City in the Valley. And I got home, and Larry had told me that he'd probably call me the next day, get back to me in a day or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I get back, and there's a message on my machine. It's Larry. He goes, I lied to you. We read it as soon as you left, and it's fantastic. We loved it, and you're great. Fantastic. I was like, total beginner's luck.
Mm-hmm.
And we shot the episode, and Larry goes, that season was the episode, the second season. There were like 13 episodes that year,
Mm-hmm.
not a full schedule. And Larry says to me after we shoot the episode, if we get picked up, you got a job. And the funny thing is, Larry was basically rooting to not get picked up.
Yeah.
In certain ways. And so yeah, I got the job.
Yeah. So when you're first writing that script, did you find it came easy to you? Like how did you transition from writing like articles and stuff like that to a sitcom script?
It's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Although for that script, I had the advantage of not knowing what I was doing. And so I wrote very freely. And story-wise was always, figuring out the story was something I had no idea about, and it kind of like, I kind of lucked into a couple of things, and then Larry did a rewrite, that was, changed several scenes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And but the structure and everything was kind of there. And it was really an advantage to not know what I was doing there, because I was, I wrote very freely, and I never had any problem with dialogue.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was, I to this day, I think dialogue is like so easy. I mean, not necessarily if you're, want to write like Aaron Sorkin,
Right.
but for the most part, dialogue is easy, and story is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Story structure was something I struggled with throughout most of my years at Seinfeld. It was just very hard, especially, finishing off an episode is really a hard thing.
Yeah. Do you feel like you ever figured it out completely, or?
When I figured it out, when I had my own show.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, when I didn't have Jerry and Larry as a backstop, all of a sudden I kind of figured it out. Like, I got much better at it, but I kind of wish I had gotten much better at it at Seinfeld, but I can't really complain.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, the thing that got to be really hard during the show, during the years I was there, like, I realized that, as being a journalist, you're always looking out at the world. You're reporting on what you see, but in Seinfeld, especially a show run by Larry, you have to be very aware of your own thoughts. You have to look forward, because I always say that anybody walking the street, if they had a mechanism for like retaining their tiniest thoughts, they could come up with 5 Seinfeld episode ideas in a week. But like, I wasn't trained to do that. Larry was amazing at it. Every little thought stuck with him. So, there was a period of time when I just got like so introspective about these things that I wasn't even like leading an existential life. I was just serving myself and everything, and it was really weird.
Yeah.
And I always tell this story. I mean, this is a story. The year of the big earthquake out here, our stage was trashed. This was 94. And so our season ended up going like 4 weeks long, and I was really exhausted. And a friend of mine, this girl I know, said, "Oh, you should go to this place, Canyon Ranch. It's really great. You'll just relax. It's like a spa, and it's really great." So I go, "Okay." Without even looking, I booked it. I didn't even realize that it was $600 a night. And I go there, and like the first thing I see is Courtney Love drying out, being carried by two guys. This
Yeah.
Then I go into my room. It and it's a Mother's Day weekend too, which is really stupid, but like a stupid time for me to go alone.
Hmm.
Although, but anyway, I spend the entire first day, $600 watching NBA playoff games. I literally stayed in my room watching NBA playoff games the entire day.
Mhm.
Like I couldn't have done that at home. The next day, I decide I better take part, and I go out on this nature walk or hike or something like that. And everybody's talking about health and fitness, and I'm bored to death. And I come back to like the main place, and I'm walking around the grounds, and I come across this group of smokers sitting around smoking cigarettes at a health spa. And so I figure I'll hang out with these people. They're probably the cool people, and they were.
Mhm.
And so basically for $1,200, I watched NBA playoff games and took up smoking. Then on the third, like the third day, which is like on Mother's Day, or no, the second day, like at dinner. Oh yeah, at dinner, I'm seated at one of these kind of group tables, and this girl who's there with her mother, she's like 25.
Mhm.
She turns to me in the middle of it while her mother's talking. She whispers in my ear, she goes, "I fucking hate my mother." And so I figure, oh, well, I'll hang out with this girl. The next day, we're hanging out and we're walking around having some laughs. And at a certain point, we start making out. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, isn't it funny how every girl's got her own little kissing system? And here, lips, here, they do this, they do.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, I'm making out with a girl and I'm not even in this moment. I'm still.
Right.
And at that point, I said, okay, we got to figure out a way to just back this off a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
A long, amusing story for a very little point, but
No, there's definitely a point. So, um, the writers, there's not really a writer's room on Seinfeld like there was be on like a traditional sitcom.
right.
You would come up with the idea or pitch the idea to Larry and Jerry, and then they would send you off, and then you would turn it into them, and they would rewrite it, whereas opposed to like a
Yeah,
regular sitcom.
they would give you notes, and then you'd probably write a second draft, and then they would just take it over and do a rewrite, which could be A to Z, or if you did a good job, not as much. And
Mm-hmm.
I certainly had scripts that ran the gamut, you know.
Yeah, but that's different than a regular sitcom where they're kind of pitching. Everybody's pitching jokes, and
Oh God, yeah, I'd have never survived that.
yeah,
I don't like to be like in a competitive humor situation, like just trying to be funnier than five other people in a room. Well, 10,
right, right.
there till 3 a.m. We worked 7 days a week for the most part, but we never worked late
Mm-hmm.
except on show night. And we would have much more complicated scripts than anybody else, but we would end much faster than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were like, speed was a very big thing. Dialogue speed was good, editing speed was good, shooting in front of a live audience. Like most shows, they'll do like 10 takes in front of a live audience of the first scene. Like by the third scene, the audience is like, I want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And we had them out of there by like 9:30
Yeah.
or 10, and then the writers and the actor, usually the actors would go to Jerry's Deli, and we would just hang out till like
Mm-hmm.
1, 2 in the morning. in the beginning, it was really funny because, this is so Larry David. Everybody would go around and talk about what was their biggest regret of the week.
That's funny. So why do you think, was it just the luck of Larry and Jerry and the people that were running the show that's how it worked out, as opposed to different sitcoms? Why do you think other sitcoms don't work like that?
Part of it, my dog is just, part of it, I think, is just ritual. Like for years, that's just the way it's been. Like, and there's been a certain romance about the whole writer's room thing and how
Right.
great and funny and collaborative it is. But also, sitcom writers are not often writers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, like, they're better in a room. They get these jobs because they're really good at yelling out jokes till 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get, on a Tuesday night at 2:30, they get a line in the script, and on Wednesday morning they're walking around like they're, Philip Roth or John Updike. I mean,
Right.
and it's the best shows kind of like have one singular kind of voice that you have to adapt to.
Mm-hmm.
Like Aaron Sorkin is great at that stuff, and and David Kelly did a whole bunch of really great shows, and so I I don't know why there isn't more of that, but it's a very kind of weird niche area if you want to be a writer,
Mm-hmm.
be a sitcom writer,
Yeah.
because it's not really writing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. So you were there, you left, you were there for like the second to the 8th season, right? And you were, after Larry left, you were the co-executive producer.
Yeah, those titles meant nothing except
Yeah.
pay scale or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just it really didn't mean anything.
Right.
It really meant more for like your next job.
Yeah.
Because we want to hire him. Well, he's a co-exec, and I ended up getting a DreamWorks deal, so that didn't even matter.
Yeah.
But those titles are just meaningless.
Yeah. So what was the decision to leave after the 8th season?
I would say there were two reasons. One is that the last episode I wrote was yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, to me, it felt like a throwback episode, because the show had gotten kind of big and certain little unwieldy, like
Mm-hmm.
big, the Puerto Rican Day Parade and, the Frogger or whatever,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
there are a lot of episodes in the last couple of years that I did not like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And, yada yada was kind of like everything I loved about the show. Very small stories, very little slices of life stories with, big laughs and like one classic scene. I mean, the scene with Jerry in their confessional is like what I dreamed of.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about Seinfeld is that you actually had the opportunity to put your mark on the cultural landscape of the country.
Right.
People said yada yada. I was
Yeah.
kind of like hoping that they would say anti-dentite, but that's fine. And they're still saying yada yada. So that seemed like a good place to leave. And also, I kind of knew the next season would be the last season. And I didn't really want to be one of, 10 different Seinfeld writers or teams, out there pitching shows. So I figured I'd get out a little early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned you can't, well, you popularized yada yada, and shrinkage is one of yours, right? I still
Yeah.
use, I bust out anti-dentite every once in a while.
Yeah, I love that one.
But how does that, Is that something you can even like wrap your mind around, that you helped popularize these
Not
phrases?
really.
Yeah.
Not really. I'm, I'm glad you asked it like that, because so many people say, you must feel great. And like, no, I can't really wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll be watching like one of the anchors on MSNBC or something, and they'll say yada, yada, yada. I'm like, oh my God. But
Mhm.
no, I can't really wrap my head around it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I also feel like that's kind of like the last Seinfeld's kind of like the last show where that could happen. Like everything's so divided now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to there's so many
Yeah.
channels, so many shows.
It's really rough. And especially for comedy, it's really rough out there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like you don't even hear people talking about too many comedy shows,
Not
maybe,
yeah.
hacks but yeah, it's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird time.
I mean, like I don't see much of network TV unless I'm watching like a sporting event. And I remember like watching the NBA playoffs this year, and you'd see them promoting like a new show, and you'd like the promo for it, they're trying to put out what the funniest moment, and you can't believe that's it.
Yeah.
And instead of must see TV, they should just change the name. They should just change their slogan to "We give up." We quit.
Yeah. What do you think? Why do you think that is? What do you think happened?
I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is that the networks were always so cautious and so like worried and things like that. And then you get shows like on HBO where like Succession, where like
Mm-hmm.
word out of their mouth is more disgusting than the one before. And people are going to want to go for that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they didn't learn any lessons from Seinfeld.
Right.
That, like when I pitched shows right after Seinfeld, they'd say like, that character doesn't seem like he's really likable. And I'd say, what were you thinking when you got into business with me? You know,
Yeah.
I, I don't know. It's pretty crazy. I really found out, it was very eye-opening. Like I found out that the networks really hated Seinfeld. They liked
Mm-hmm.
it as fans, but they hated it because it broke all their rules.
Yeah.
It broke every one of their rules. The likability thing. They'd screw each other over. Like the friendships, they'd screw each other over all
Yeah.
the time, and they would treat people horribly. People would die, and people would get deported.
Right.
I mean, we, Susan got killed.
Mm-hmm.
George basically killed his fiance. I was like, maybe in the last episode they were all gonna die. I mean,
Yeah. How do
yeah.
you feel about the last episode?
I feel much better about it than everybody else, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought it was good. I don't know what people were expecting. Like,
Right.
what did
Yeah.
they think? I mean, the only quibble I think you could have with that last episode is that watching and laughing as a fat guy is getting mugged might have been like one step beyond how bad these people were.
Yeah.
Not really. And
Yeah.
but even if you think that, they wind up paying the price.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know. I thought it was great. I really did. I thought it
Yeah,
was
I liked
really,
it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know what people who just hated it.
I
What?
know.
I don't know what they. I actually, I think if I was talking about this with Larry one day, that if he had written 10 different finales, no, people would have hated all of them. Like
Yeah.
there was no way. and unless, like it's very hard to write a finale unless you're going to, do it like MASH, where it's really sappy.
Mm-hmm. And that's not the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the DreamWorks deal, what did that entail?
A lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was, I did this, I immediately got a show on that lasted 2 seasons called It's Like,
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer Grey and some other people. And it was a very eye-opening experience, but I really enjoyed it. But, um, it was the timing and the network was a little off because the funny thing, because they discovered Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Mm.
And they wanted to put it on, once it hit, they wanted to put it on like 3 or 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
So the first the first 2 victims of reality TV or unscripted TV were my show, It's Like, and Aaron Sorkin's show, Sports Night.
Oh,
We
yeah,
both,
yeah.
we both got canceled because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, like at that point, you just throw your hands up. And then, I pitched, but I did several other pilots. And then I got Jeffrey Katzenberg re-signed me for a second 3 years. And, I pitched some other shows and it was really tough going. That's when, like the network ratings were falling through the floor. So they were more nervous than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I helped out with a lot of DreamWorks projects because I really liked the company, so I spent a lot of time on Madagascar.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and a few others, and there were some other scripts that I kind of like helped out with, like I was more, and instead of just being a TV person, I was kind of a DreamWorks person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then when did you write your first novel?
It's funny, like after my DreamWorks stints, I just one day had this idea for like an op-ed column and I sold it to the Washington Post. And then I was like, God, I really like writing these op-eds.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote like a whole bunch of articles for, mainly for the New York Times, LA Times, and Washington Post. And then I wrote this novel in, I think, 2014. Where I just got this idea. And, because my friend's mother was in town and she lived on Long Island, and her entire town was kind of taken over by Orthodox Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And if you opened your store on a Saturday, they would economically freeze you out. And I was just so appalled by that.
Right.
I mean, anything in religion drives me batshit, but people talk about the Bible. I'm like it's in the Bible. I was like, yes, Jonah ate a whale. A whale inside the Bible. That doesn't sound like something that, Woodward and Bernstein did a lot of reporting out,
Right.
confirm it. So yeah, so I don't know, it just gave me like the impetus to write this novel. And it was like, I don't consider myself a very disciplined person, but somehow I got into this thing where I would at least try to like make some progress every day, even if it was just one paragraph. And
Mm-hmm.
chances are, if you do that, you're going to write more than one paragraph. And even, no matter what, you could feel like you're moving along. And I didn't really know where the story was going, but I liked where it turned out.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of going by that, the driving your car at night theory of writing, which is like, you can see as far as your headlights and still get to the end where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I need to read that one. I read Me as Well when during the pandemic, like during the first lockdown. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So
I
how
was
long
That one
What?
was like I was reading an obituary of Philip Roth, and they were talking about, this, very famous book that he wrote, Portnoy's Complaint, where he's kind of like obsessed about his mother. And I was trying to think of like what I would get that obsessed about, or what I have that many opinions about.
Hmm.
And I just decided it was sports. And then, like this whole Me Too movement and everything like that was like so crazy that I mixed up the two of them. And, that's how that book came out.
Yeah, and he's a sports journalist, and he ends up getting fired from his job after he makes a sexist joke, which kind of happened at the Washington Post like
Yeah,
couple months ago.
unbelievable. And that
Yeah,
was like, he didn't, did he?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he just
Yeah.
retweeted something. Yeah,
Yeah. And it was like, I think it was like, is your wife bisexual or bipolar or something like that?
yeah. Every girl's
Yeah.
bisexual, either bisexual or bipolar. You just have to figure out which one or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Like it's, it's not the funniest line in the world, but
right.
certainly not the most offensive. Like,
Yeah,
this whole thing is so bad.
I
This
know.
whole this whole wokeness thing is so bad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, and I also, in the last 5 or 6 years started doing stand-up kind of on a,
Hmm.
and I love it. It's so much fun. I mean, it's a lot more fun if you have nothing at stake. But you know, I I always opened up my sets by saying, I guess most of you know me as a guy who impregnated Roe from Roe v. Wade. And I was like worried about doing that now.
Uh-huh.
And the funny thing is, it's getting bigger laughs than ever.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm kind of encouraged. And, like, I don't do stuff that's, like potentially that offensive, but I'm willing to take the chance on being canceled. I mean, like, what are they going to cancel me from? Walking the dog? I was doing this joke about Islam and saying that it's really a beautiful religion and it's not fair to let 75 million bad apples spoil the whole.
That's a good joke.
And some people, sometimes it gets like either groans or nervous laughs, and I
Hmm.
don't care. I don't
Right.
care. I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah. Speaking of like people who weren't afraid to take risk, you wrote an article along when you were freelancing about Gilbert Gottfried, one of my
Yeah,
favorite comics.
the greatest, the
Yeah.
great.
I always say my favorite comic is Norm Macdonald, and then
Norm
Gilbert.
Norm was great too.
Yeah.
I got to know Norm. It was
Oh, really?
yeah. He was writing on Roseanne, which was on the same lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a friend who was writing on that show. So I, like on Seinfeld, like you weren't stuck in a room. So I could just like walk around the lot whenever I wanted. I would like socialize. To me, it was like going back to college,
Mm-hmm.
like it was like, oh, I'll go to this sorority house and hang out, you know. So I went there to see my friend Betsy, and and I got to know Norm, and it was really great. And I hadn't seen him in a long time. And then I bumped into him, not maybe 6, 8 months before he died, and it was really great to see him. We had it was like really nice seeing him.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
he was
Any good stories?
no, not really.
Yeah.
I just liked him a lot.
Yeah.
He's a terrific comic, and you get to be a little bit of a comedy snob after a while, and so like you really appreciate the ones you like. Like I went to a memorial service for Jerry's manager George Shapiro this weekend.
Mm.
Like 91 years old.
Hmm.
Kind of a legend in the business, and a lot of people were giving speeches up there. Too many, but like Kevin Nealon,
Mm.
he is always great. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, he's
no matter
great too.
what he does, he is always hysterical and brilliant. Always.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I was lucky enough to open for him one time.
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
The Helium Comedy Club in Indianapolis.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, it was great.
And he's the nicest guy too.
Oh, very nice, super nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on done readings with him where you like read articles or essays or things that you've written,
Hmm.
and he's just hysterical, just
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, he killed every time. It was great.
Yeah. And Sarah Silverman was there also Saturday night, and those are my favorite comics. Sarah's to me is like a god. I
Yeah.
mean, she is
She,
so fantastic, and
she's
she can
great.
get away with anything, and she's
Hmm.
brilliant. And I really like that Gerard Carmichael a lot.
Oh yeah, he's great too.
I loved him like the first time I saw his first special. I was like, wow, this guy's got
Hmm.
a great way about him on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
He's so good. And Gilbert, I don't know. Gilbert to me is like the greatest comic in the world.
For that article, did you follow him around and watch him do sets in New York and stuff?
I went, I literally saw him do 6 sets, no, 7 sets in like between Thursday and Sunday
Yeah.
at Caroline's.
Oh, really?
It was like the greatest thing in the world. I never got bored because every set was completely different than the one before. He had so much material. And on the Sunday night set when he was finishing, he made good money on those. He would sell them all out. And like he didn't want to leave the stage. Because that's where he felt comfortable,
Hmm.
and at the end of the night, like he's been up, his last set's like going on 2 hours, and he's saying things like, Gilbert, get off the stage. You have no more material. And what a genius.
What was he like off stage? Because he seems like a tough. He'd be like a tough guy to actually interview.
Yeah, you actually almost had to fool him into saying something meaningful.
Hmm.
He was pretty unreachable, but you could hang out with him a lot because like if you like could take him out to dinner,
Right.
because he's like the cheapest person in the history of the world. But I got him, between tricking him into actually saying some things and talking to others. I think I got a lot out of him.
Yeah. Yeah. So how often are you doing stand up?
Not as often as I should. Just the whole thing about getting booked. Like I'm a little past the hustling stage.
Hmm.
How often do you do it?
Well, I try to go out every night, at least do like an open mic.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I for when I was in Indiana, I was doing it a lot. I was getting booked a lot,
Yeah.
and I was kind of working the road and stuff. But here I kind of it's like second year in New York, so I'm kind of like reestablishing myself and getting
Right.
to know the scene. So I'll get like actual shows like 3 a month, 3 or 4 a month, and then mics
Right.
and stuff in between.
Yeah. It's really hard to just. It's really hard to get stage time, and I just can't believe how many comedians there are.
Yeah, it's
Like
insane.
like when I met Larry, I mean, I just knew of him just because like there were only like 30 comedians in the whole city, maybe,
Hmm.
like, and I had never seen him do stand up. I've still never seen him do stand up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've never seen Jerry do a whole set.
Really?
I saw almost all of his material just because he would warm up the audience,
Hmm.
and he would do material probably just to keep it fresh in his mind.
Yeah.
But I never saw either of them really do stand up.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah,
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 it is crazy how many comics there are. The comic strip has this thing where you line up for to get an audition spot.
yeah.
It was a couple of weeks ago, and you're supposed to line up at 5. I get there at around 4:45. There's already 100 comics in line in front
Oh
of
my
me.
God.
And then so we get through, and we get our spots, and I have an audition spot for November 23rd, 2023.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, that's like cruel and unusual punishment. That is fucking sick.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's got to be an easier way. I think
You'd think so, yeah.
you have to like, I guess you have to like start your own club or something,
Yeah.
which people do, like,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
or, they produce a show somewhere like here, there's a couple of places where you could actually produce a show.
Yeah. There's some good like produced shows and stuff. I need to do that at some point.
Next time I go to New York, before I go, I'm from working with Gilbert, I got to know Caroline, and we're still like a little bit in touch, and I'm going to tell her, look, I want stage time there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you need an opener, I'm available.
I'll keep it in mind.
Yeah. So thanks for doing this, man. I'll wrap up with this. What's the best piece of advice you would give to somebody just starting out?
Like I said before, do as much as you can to increase your chances of getting lucky. Like, put as much stuff out there as you can, meet as many people as you can, and above all else, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
That's my biggest advice, is don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to make it, like, if you're in and if you're in Jerry's category, okay, you could afford to be an asshole.
Yeah.
And he's not,
Exactly.
But it's not like having the dream of working for Goldman Sachs, where you could do well in college, get into a good business school, and be hired by Goldman Sachs. There's no direct route. You just gotta you gotta put stuff out there. I mean, you never know what's going to lead to what. I mean, I wrote this article in the New York Times, and it turned out that it got me my Seinfeld job.
Right.
I mean, I wrote it in 1988, and it got me a Seinfeld job in 1990.
Yeah.
On a completely different coast.
Exactly.
And so you never know. And you got to be bold, like I don't even relate to the human being I was who wrote a letter to the Washington Post as a woman. I don't even know what that person was anymore. Like I'm kind of look back on and go, wow, that's pretty cool that I did that.
Yeah, definitely.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, and it worked out.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to translate that now into getting more stage time. I should just call up and say, hey, I'm I'm Jerry Seinfeld. It's Jerry Seinfeld calling. I'm calling for Jerry Seinfeld. He wants to get us do a set tonight.
Yeah.
I said Peter Mehlman.
Well, thanks so much for doing this. This was great to talk to you.
It was a pleasure. Really great.
Yeah.
And you asked good questions, and I like your chances.
I appreciate it. Well, thanks so much, man.
Okay, take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, baby, I hear the blues are calling. Tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Mercy. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe. But I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Scrambled eggs all over my face. What is a boy to do? Mabry has left the building.